Hello, I'm Bill McCartney and we're back on Port Phillip Bay with the Tug Heuer Challenge, round 3 of the National Circuit of Racing for 18-foot skiffs, and today the second heat. With me again is Warwick Rooklin. Xerox looking unassailable, Warwick. They just have to attack.
Yeah, certainly it's crunch time for the Bank of New Zealand and Prudential, and if they're going to take it to the wire, today's the day.
Okay, lining up for race 2.
And conditions just fabulous for this race. We've got a beautiful 15-knot southwesterly, sunny conditions, clear water on Port Phillip Bay. Coming up to a start, Bank of New Zealand very well placed indeed, and away they go. The gun fires and Bank of New Zealand wins the start. Prudential also looking very good, got clear air. Tasmania naturally different, not bad, but getting a bit tangled up with Skilled Engineering, and Skilled Engineering forced to pull down below them. Also Xerox in behind that leading bunch have had to change directions to get out from behind them. Skilled Engineering doing the same. Tasmania naturally different also tacking out, and those skiffs going out to the right to clear their air.
And Bank of New Zealand got a perfect start. I mean, that's as good as it gets. They were on the line exactly as the gun went, with clear air at the right end of the line. And they are heading off towards the favoured side of the course, I believe. They're heading left, while the other boats with dirty air had to tack away. And on board Prudential with head cam.
Cub's gone out to the right.
Skipper Rob Brown alerting his crew to the fact that Xerox has gone out to the right. She had to go out there. It wasn't by choice. She had no choice but to change directions and go out to the right-hand side of the course. Whereas, and Tasmania naturally different, they too had to go out along with Skilled Engineering, the Cruising Rangoon Restaurant, and Tip Top White High Five also. So it'll be very interesting. In about 3 or 4 minutes, they'll come back to cross tacks with Prudential, and we'll find out exactly where they are as these skiffs make their way up into the wind, sailing as close as possible to directly into the wind and zigzagging their way up the course towards the top mark.
And you could tell from the comments of Rob Brown then that beating Xerox is paramount in their mind. They have to beat Xerox to keep the hopes of winning the National Grand Prix circuit alive, and today's the day to do it.
Changing directions on Xerox now. Tasmania naturally different, right with them. They decide that that's not a bad move. They change directions too. Skilled Engineering just clipping the back end of Xerox there, still right with them as they now head up. And again, you can see Xerox's rig compared to the others flicking in and out with the pressure too much for them. Phil Reed, the crewman on board Skilled Engineering, leaning right out. A very individual character he is too. He's got a completely distinct way of using that trapeze harness. And here's the course for today's race. They're out of the start, they're headed up towards the top mark, then down to the wing mark, back down to the bottom mark, through the start-finish line. That completes 1 lap. There are 2 laps in this course. And at this stage now, Prudential has changed directions, coming back up on port tack. There she is. She crosses ahead of Xerox, but up above her, Ella Bachet leads Prudential, and up above them was Bank of New Zealand leading them.
And Prudential and Xerox have big rig, and Ella Bachet with the number 2 rig looks more comfortable to me and appears to be moving through the water a little bit quicker. And back on board Prudential with head cam.
Okay, we're sucking a bit of shit here now.
Rob Brown commenting about the fact that the wind leaving the sails of Ella Bachet is now hitting the sails of Prudential and disturbing their air. Made the decision to change direction so they can get out of that disturbed air. Now coming back across onto a starboard tack and heading up, but well and truly behind Bank of New Zealand, who have really got a terrific lead. And indeed, Andrew Cuddy on Tip Top White High Five with the yellow signs on their sail also ahead of Prudential. So Prudential in strife here. There's Tip Top White High Five doing very, very nicely indeed. Once again, had a fantastic race yesterday. And Adrian Carlin, Craig Ramsden and Neil McDonald on board Ella Bachet, currently in either second or first position. I think Warwick just second, Bank of New Zealand slightly ahead.
Yeah, so I think Bank's slightly ahead, but Ella Bachet tacking now, and we'll get a good indication of the gap in a moment's time. But I think Bank is just slightly ahead, but Ella Bachet has sailed this beat superbly. The tactics have been very good, the boat speed has been good, and certainly the boats with second rig seem to have the advantage in the early stage.
And Bank of New Zealand, the leader, is also the focus of our viewer competition today. Keep your eye on Bank of New Zealand. We'll be asking a question about them shortly and giving you a telephone number. So there's Ella Bachet crossing ahead of Xerox. I get the feeling, though, even though Xerox is rigged there, flicking inside out with that big number 1 rig, despite that fact, they still seem to be going very fast. And just in the last 90 seconds or so, made up a little bit of territory on Ella Bachet. Now coming right out to the right-hand side of the course before changing directions. And once they do change directions, they should be very close to getting around that top mark for the first time.
Yeah, they've recovered well from that bad start. They certainly had to get clear air and get the boat speed up. They've got the boat speed advantage over the rest of the field. but with big rig and not a good tack there. The sheet hand getting all caught up and still in strife. Now they don't need that. It's a very bad tack from Xerox, and things are not going well for Phil Barnett and his crew today.
Xerox struggling as we go to the break. At the top mark for the first time, Bank of New Zealand leads. And indeed, in the viewer competition today, we're asking the question, who is the skipper of the Bank of New Zealand, the leader of this race? If you get the answer right, we can present you with a Smarter check account with an opening deposit of $500 from the Bank of New Zealand. The number to ring, 0055 60561. You'll see it appearing on the sails from time to time.
And the race is unfolding superbly for Scott Ramsden, Charlie Diekman and Cameron McDonald on board Bank of New Zealand. They got that spinnaker up and setting very smartly as Ella Bachet rounds in second position. Xerox has been able to sail up into third, but I think Prudential might just get them at the top mark. Well, there we go. Tip-top white high five, in fact, is in third position in front of the more favoured runners of Prudential and Xerox. So they're hanging in there and serving it up to the more experienced runners.
On board Prudential.
Spinnaker going up the mast, being pulled out to the end of the pole, and a very professional set on board Prudential.
But boy, oh boy, are they struggling for boat speed. They're hanging in there by the skin of their teeth. Rob Brown giving instructions to his crew. Xerox around behind them. But we know Xerox started badly. They've got superior boat speed, so Rob Brown is really going to struggle to hold them out in this. And look at tip-top white high five. Andrew Cuddy really starting to set the sailing world on fire here. He shouldn't be there. He doesn't really have the boat. It's 2 years old. The rigs are 2 years old. And here are all these much ritzier campaigns, and they're behind him. So he must be feeling very fancy just at the moment.
Well, I don't know about right at the moment. I think right at the moment his heart would be absolutely pumping. He's got Rob Brown hot on his heels, followed by Xerox, and he'll be concentrating very hard to try and keep them there, because this is showtime for him, and his sponsors are watching, and this is a chance for him to show what he can really do.
Xerox's boat speed, look at him now, climbing up all over the top of Prudential, now starting to steal the breeze out of Prudential sails, and no doubt appeared to me passing them. The lead on Bank of New Zealand now some 250 metres to Ella Bachet second. Ella Bachet got that bunch right behind them, giving them heaps of pressure, changing directions at the wing mark now.
Jibing on board Prudential with head cam.
Beautiful jibe, Homer.
Rob Brown congratulating his crew on a job well done.
And indeed, they jibe right on top of tip-top white high five there, coming down towards the bottom mark for the first time, and Xerox didn't have such a good jibe. I think maybe Prudential did a little bit better at that wing mark than Xerox. Their jibe was a bit slower. In the background, skilled engineering coming around, and tip-top white high five, still managing to hold out Prudential and still in third position. At the moment, Bank of New Zealand leads, Ella Bachet second, tip-top white high five third, Prudential with the big red spinnaker is fourth, and Xerox is fifth, sixth is skilled engineering.
And this is very close racing for second position. Second, third, fourth, fifth and sixth. But at the moment, Scott Ramsden on board Bank of New Zealand has got command of this race. He's coming down to complete lap one, and all he has to do now is keep out of trouble, cover his opposition and make no major mistakes, and he could win his third race of this National Grand Prix circuit.
Quite severely under pressure there, Scott Ramsden. He's got one crewman sitting on the other side. There he is, Cameron McDonald, almost having a little rest over there, but obviously the angle caught them out there a little bit, Warwick, because they were very deep with the spinnaker. Didn't have all three crewmen out on the wing, but still, they've held their lead very well. Ella Bachet seems to have made up a little bit of ground, actually, but Scott Ramsden looking very cool under pressure on board Bank of New Zealand as he rounds the bottom mark in first position in the second race here of the Tag Heuer Challenge in Melbourne.
Well, he's not under so much pressure at the moment, Bill. The other guys certainly came down with a bit different breeze and were able to pull them back. On board Prudential.
Okay, go for it.
This is very unusual from what I hear around the traps. Rob Brown getting very frustrated from his position, being buried.
Go, go, go.
He's not used to being behind.
Hit it, Homer.
He's a very flustered Rob Brown. And I think the stress and the pressure showing to tell there, Bill.
Well, there was plenty of noise going on, and Rob losing his lolly a touch just there, but still a lot of pressure here. He knows he's got to beat Xerox. He's got to get up there. He's got to beat Bank of New Zealand, for heaven's sake. So he's got plenty ahead of him. And so a little bit of frustration showing. Look at Xerox's speed here. She came round that bottom mark behind Prudential, gone round the other side of them, and just sailed straight out from underneath them.
Yes, and Prudential going behind Tip Top White High Five, and they're buried back there. And I tell you what, the crew on board Prudential didn't appreciate the words of Rob Brown and told him so in no uncertain terms.
Stand by.
Xerox has tacked up ahead of them, so they're now changing directions. There you just got a glimpse of Xerox, so Xerox right behind Prudential here as Prudential tacks to try and cover, trying to tack right in front of them. They've done it successfully, and indeed Xerox forced to tack away again. The skiff's trying to sail as close as possible to directly into the wind. Prudential was able to get right dead in front of Xerox, start feeding dirty air onto their sails, and Xerox forced away, so whilst he hasn't got the boat speed, he's still fighting like crazy.
Well, Rob Brown and Chris Harmsman have been to the America's Cup, and that's some match racing tactics showing up there. And skilled engineering doing well in 6th position.
Bank of New Zealand, clear leaders in the second heat of the Tag Heuer Challenge on Port Phillip Bay. Beautiful conditions. Scott Ramsden, the skipper, Charlie Diekman and Cameron McDonald all looking very relaxed, 150 metres ahead of Alabache in second position and going just beautifully, coming up the course towards the top end of the course for the second time. And these guys have got the race under control at this stage. There they are in blue. They're going from that start-finish line up towards the top mark. In blue, Bank of New Zealand leads. Alabache second in pink. Tip Top White High Five in yellow is in third position.
And tacking now, Bank of New Zealand. And they've done everything right. They've selected the right rig. They've got a fantastic start. They haven't panicked. And they've taken control of this race right from the very beginning. And I don't think they're going to relinquish the lead they have at the moment.
But this is interesting. Alabache about to cross with Prudential, and looking as though Prudential's made up a bit of ground here. She went further out to the left when they came round the bottom there, and very close between these two as they cross. On board Prudential, we see the green sails of Alabache in the distance, so probably still 30 or 40 metres there, so they've still got plenty to do. Skilled engineering in 6th position. Up behind them, Prima Drinks, currently in 7th position, and at the head of the fleet, Bank of New Zealand leads comprehensively.
Xerox doing everything they can, and tacking now, but doing everything they can to try and get back into this race. Certainly they were buried very early on, and they haven't recovered. Alabache is doing a good job and maintaining second position, even though a little bit of pressure starting to mount from Prudential. And there's the current positions. Bank of New Zealand in first place, Alabache second, and Tip Top White High Five, the best result from them all year, in third position.
And there's a great indication as to why Bank of New Zealand going so well. You see very little movement from the crew there, the sails setting perfectly for them, not having to work the sails much at all, but Xerox starting to clamber up on Alabache here, starting to take ground out of them, and look at this, this is very close, a very close cross indeed. So I would say now closing up between Alabache, Xerox and Prudential, and of course Tip Top White High Five as we get up towards the top end of the course for the last time, getting very close between those four. It'll be very interesting to see how they round that top mark as Alabache tacks. Now if Xerox makes the top mark here, because she went earlier than Alabache, then she will round ahead of Alabache. If they have to tack again, then they're going to be behind, because those tacks take how much time each time, Warwick?
Well, it depends on how well they do it, but certainly, I mean, a good tack can be done probably losing, 10 seconds, and a bad tack anything up to about 45 seconds.
More work going on board the Xerox skiff with that bigger mainsail. They're having to work the sails more to keep her flat in the water, and Big Dave Gibson there having to work the sheet. That's the chap in the middle. He's having to ease that sail and pull it back on a lot more than the other skiffs. There's Prudential coming into picture, and Prudential will cross just ahead of Xerox. Nothing in it at all. Whoa! Skimmed the rear end there, and so nothing in it, getting up towards the top end of the course, but Prudential managing to cling to that lead over Xerox, and they've got to hang in there as Bank of New Zealand rounds the top mark in clear first position.
Right, Gilly?
And Xerox had to go behind Prudential then, because Prudential had right of way. But Bank of New Zealand out in front, and all they've got to do now is keep it all together and cruise home to take out a well-deserved win.
Look at this at the top mark.
Tack!
Wow! Very, very close. That sounded to me like there was a bit of a touch there, but Xerox had the right of way, but they were screaming out on board Prudential that they shouldn't change directions and tack because they were making the mark, and there were some very specific signals made on board Prudential then towards Xerox.
Well, it was a little bit more than a touch, Bill, because that was very, very hairy indeed, and certainly that could have been disaster for Rob Brown, but I tell you, he's desperate.
The crew on Prudential trying to set that spinnaker as fast as they can go. They got Xerox right behind them.
And Xerox did a much better set than Prudential. Prudential gets it up now. Elabashe setting their spinnaker, but Xerox was the quickest out of the three.
Head cam on Rob Brown.
Clean up, Hummer.
Asking Chris Harmson to go back in and clean up the ropes in the deck, and there's second, third and fourth as we go to the break. Xerox battling it out with Prudential for second and third. Flying along with their spinnakers up between the top mark and the wing mark. Prudential ahead but up above, and in that position Xerox is favoured because when they change direction she will be up above Prudential, so Prudential needs to try and sail down right in front of Xerox, up behind them in yellow Elabashe, and then tip-top white Hi-Fi back there in fifth position but still right with them.
And that's still a good result from Tip Top. They've dropped back a bit, but they're still hanging in there with this more favoured bunch. But certainly this is going to be very close when they get to the bottom mark, and I wouldn't like to put a bet on who's going to get there first.
Well, Bank of New Zealand leading comprehensively, and they can produce for you a Smarter check account with an opening deposit of $500 in the viewer competition. All you have to do is tell us the name of the skipper of that skiff and ring 0055 605 61 with the answer.
And there we see Xerox jibing inside, in other words turning around inside Prudential, and could possibly take the wind away from Prudential. I tell you what, Rob Brown is really showing the strain of being locked in battle and not being where he wants to be.
His big problem here is that this skiff is up above him. The wind is coming straight across their backs, so that Prudential is in strife trying to get underneath Xerox because Xerox will steal their wind, and already I think the effects of Xerox interfering with the wind flow to Prudential starting to tell. The Xerox going faster, sailing over the top of Prudential. The crew looking very cool indeed. They've got the boat speed, sailing brilliantly, and starting to climb up over the top of Prudential at the moment, and Prudential needs this victory desperately.
Yes, I think Prudential will be able to just to get in front of Xerox. I don't know, it's very close, but Prudential can force Xerox up if they can get close enough. But no, there we go. Xerox takes Prudential's breeze and just powers away in front of them.
And really powers away. Xerox just absolutely rocketing away, and once again Rob Brown, an unhappy lad, as the boys work as hard as they can. Dave Slennett working their sails, Rob Brown sliding in, and look at Xerox go. They've got a burst of breeze, and obviously Prudential missing the breeze here. Xerox has picked up a gust, generating 25 knots of boat speed, and suddenly, from being right with them, they're 75, 80, 85, 90 metres ahead of them and absolutely burning them off.
Yes, and this head cam is really revealing because it hasn't been before that we've been able to get on board and see actually what goes on, but I can tell you there's plenty of stress and strain on board Prudential right now as Xerox goes for the drop, and I'd say Rob Brown, being the way he is at the moment, will keep the spinnaker on to the very last moment and try and slide inside of Phil Barnett and Xerox around the bottom mark for the last time and get back second place.
The leaders, and I believe soon to be the winners of this race, Bank of New Zealand at the top end, changing directions now to go up to the finish line, and they look unbeatable. Xerox rounded in second position, clear second position, and Prudential now rounding in third position, and they really butchered that one today, but it's been the Bank of New Zealand that's put the runs on the board. A very, very comprehensive, confident, fast victory, and she might just be sailing back into contention as this series. They cross the line, the boys very happy with the result, and Bank of New Zealand has another victory on the circuit. Charlie Diekman pleased as punch. Tip-top wide high five as Bank of New Zealand goes through the line, coming down to the bottom mark. They've sailed well, found a bit of a hole in the breeze, slipped back to fifth. Xerox's tack coming up to the mark, and the results of race 2 of the Tag Heuer Challenge. Another excellent result for the Bank of New Zealand, and also tip-top wide high five doing well again. So, after 2 races, Xerox a clear leader. Bank of New Zealand right behind them. Prudential struggling on 26. Tip Top White High Five fourth.
Well, two of the young lions of 18-foot skiff racing starting to show out here. Scott Ramsden in Bank of New Zealand, looming as the possible challenger to Xerox's supremacy. And Andrew Cuddy in Tip Top White High Five, also showing some tremendous form over the last couple of races. We'll see whether they can sustain that form when we return tomorrow.